What's up, guys? It's me, Grey Wolf, back here to do another video for you. It's just gonna be another real quickie. So I found myself working on this project, putting my new rustler together, and I have a set of aluminum caster blocks and steering knuckles for this thing. And I'm going to switch to the overhead view so you guys can see this. So I already have the blue aluminum caster block right here installed on the kit. Here's the steering knuckle. Now, this steering knuckle is designed to be held in place by a metal pin with E-clips on either end of it, right? Problem was, the E-clips that I had for this pair had gotten bent enough. They weren't bent really bad, but they were bent enough to where it made it very, very difficult to actually get them back into place. In fact, I had a very tough time getting them out in the first place. So I wanted to be able to use, you know, the standard Traxxas pins, which are just smooth metal pins with some thread on the end, and it's basically designed, like, say if I were doing this pin right here, you know, the thread is basically designed to go into the plastic, and then the pin just holds everything else in place. Alright, so I wanted to use these with the steering knuckle and the caster block, but there was no threads in the steering knuckle in order to be able to screw this in, right? Well, that's where these guys come in handy. These are a couple of there's actually 4 different taps I have. 2 of them came in these little convenient boxes. The other 2 did not come in boxes, so I just kind of put 2 pair in each box just to have something handy to keep them in. But basically, these are taps, and for you guys that are used to working around machinery, you know, factories, whatever, I'm sure you're probably familiar with taps. This video is probably not going to be informative for you, but if you're not, then it may be. So essentially what I did was, since this is a 3mm screw, I went and got my 3mm tap, which is this one right here, I believe. Yeah, it actually, you probably can't see it on camera. Maybe you can on this camera. You might, I don't know if you can read that or not on this camera, but it actually says M3 by 0.5 millimeter, which M3 of course is the size, and the 0.5 is the pitch of the threads. Which 0.5 is standard for an M3 screw. So basically what you can do, or what I did in this case, was you can get one of these tools. This is a cheap tool. You can actually get better tools than this, but I got these off of eBay. I want to say the actual dies themselves were just a few bucks, $2, $3, $4, something like that. Now the tool is a little bit more. The tool I think was around $7 to $9, but this is a really cheap, crappy one. In fact, when I got it, the manufacturing quality on this is about the poorest I've ever seen, but it's actually fine for no more than I use it. But I probably will get a better one at some point. It was so bad when I first got it, I had to really clean it up. If you can tell, there's a lot of like brush marks and stuff on it where I took a steel brush and was basically looked like it had been sitting around in a factory for a very long time, or a warehouse rather, and you know, the metal was all oxidizing and stuff. So I tried to clean it up as best I could, and I put a a coat of dry silicone lube over it to help keep it from rusting or oxidizing anymore. But at any rate, you put your die in the little tool there, and go back to the overhead view here, and then essentially what you can do is you can just stick the die in the hole, and then you basically you got to hold it. You want to hold it as straight as possible. I don't know how well you guys can see this, but you want to hold it just as straight as possible, and then basically you just turn it, and you have to put a little bit of force on it, but not a lot. Now I've already done this one, so it's just threading in there as easy as a screw would. Now when you're actually tapping it, I'm sorry, I was saying die earlier. These are taps. Dies basically they're basically the opposite of a tap. At least if I understand my dies and taps correctly, which I might not, so correct me if I'm wrong. But at any rate, when you do this, you will have to put a little bit of force behind it initially, not a lot, but a little bit, just to kind of get the blades to kind of dig in and start tapping into the metal or plastic or whatever it is that you're tapping. And essentially you go until the thing's all the way through, and then you just back it out, and once you've done that, then the part's threaded at that point. And essentially, in my case, it enables me to take these pins, the Traxxas pins that you normally use with the kit, and it allows me to screw them in now. In fact, I'll just go ahead and install this. Now I'm going to put a little bit of thread locker on here, since this is a metal screw going into aluminum. You are going to want thread locker on it in this particular case. And then just thread her right on down in there. Once that thread locker dries, it should keep it from coming back out. And as you can tell, we have a perfectly functioning steering knuckle, and we can now use the standard screws for that. So at any rate, I just thought I would share that. Now, I've also found this a useful tool for stripped out plastic parts. If you have in some areas, now not all areas you'll be able to do this in, but in some areas, say you have a 2.5 millimeter screw and screw hole, and you strip it out because it's plastic, right? Sometimes plastic's really soft and it gets stripped out easy. Well, what you can do is you can go into that 2.5 millimeter hole, take your M3 tap, and re-thread the hole for an M3 screw. Switch out to an M3 screw, and you may be able to revitalize your hole using a slightly bigger screw. Now, like I said, sometimes that doesn't work because, like in the case of shocks, for example, shocks are a 3 millimeter hole typically, at least on we're going to stick with the Rustler theme here. The shocks on a Rustler are an M3 hole, 3 millimeter hole, and while you could go in like say on the front, on the front arms, like right here, while you could go in and actually tap out the holes to make them bigger, say 4mm instead of 3, you can't make the ball big enough, you know, the metal ball that's inside the shock part right here, you can't make that big enough to accommodate an M4 screw. So in that case it wouldn't work. But if it was a case where it's just like two plastic pieces being held together, like say on the rear shock tower for example, you could totally go in and retap those for 4mm. If you say stripped one out, or maybe multiple ones out, you had a bad crash or something, you could totally go in and redo those in M4, and tap both pieces and probably revitalize that piece. So anyway, just thought I would share those because they've come in handy. Not a lot, but you know, I found I don't know, in the 3 months, 4 months maybe that I've owned them, I've found probably 4 or 5 uses for them. And granted, you know, it's one of those tools that you're not going to use very often, but there's going to be times when it's going to save your butt. You know, the rear shock tower, for example, instead of having to buy a new chassis and shock tower, you could just you know, retap the holes and save you a lot of time and effort and money. So at any rate, if you like Facebook pics, check out my Facebook page. You can also start up RC related conversations there. That is www.facebook.com/Graywolf Studios 74, all one word. Or you can drop me questions, comments, concerns, whatever, at my email address, which is graywolfstudios74@gmail.com. Peace.